could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Steven Kasten. He is entrepreneur, the martial arts instructor, also the member of Creative Society. Please, Steven, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's start conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Sure. Well, first, I didn't get a chance to thank you before we started, but I appreciate the concept of the podcast because these are probably the more important conversations, right, for people to be having. So, thank you for having me on, and thank you for what you're doing. I've listened to a few of your episodes there, and I think this is the more important parts of being a human, right? And exchanging this sort of information. So um I I started training martial arts when I was 5. It's been 27 years now. So quite a long time. I'm a
Yeah.
martial arts instructor, so naturally growing up in that sort of environment, you come across a lot of Eastern philosophy, right? So um at a young age I was introduced to that sort of stuff, and it's not too common, especially in American culture. So um I was really able to be introduced to some deeper levels of thinking, luckily, probably around the ages, I say 10 or so. I became a huge Bruce Lee fan.
Oh,
um and I just realized there was something in Bruce Lee that no one else around me had, and I wanted to know what that was. um So that kind of, like, I think, was the beginning for me. Um, yeah, really. As I grew older, I kind of I led down some unexpected paths, which really, like any other person's life, when you come across these unexpected, painful experiences, right? They're kind of turning points for you that lead you down some roads that is a big learning experience. So as I started my life as an entrepreneur at 19 and opened my own martial arts school, I became really overworked. And with that came a lot of stress, um, digestion issues, 2 herniated discs in my back. I just beat up my body to the point where it shut down on me. Not sleeping well, partying a lot, typical 20-year-old business um, activities. And yeah, that pain kind of led me down, like, hold on a sec, I might be doing something wrong here, you know? And that's what led me down the holistic health coaching route, right? Trying to actually heal myself. That was the goal. So I could continue my job, because I wasn't able to. Well, not that I wasn't able to, but it made my job extremely difficult. Hardly being able to walk and being a martial arts instructor isn't, you know, it's not my idea of a good time. So I I did some holistic health coaching through the Czech Institute, under Paul Czech, where I did some integrative movement science courses where you learn just musculoskeletal anatomy and learning how to view the body as one functioning organism, right? And that kind of brought me into the deeper questions of, like, what causes so much pain in a human, right? and not just physical pain, but mental, emotional, and spiritual pain as well, right? So just this idea of, why do humans suffer so much? You know, why am I suffering so much? And then obviously when you ask that question, you're in for a wild ride, right? So, and I'm sure that, you know, people that are doing some form of introspective work they're probably laughing, right? Because um it happens to all of us, right? If we choose to go that route. But yeah, that's essentially what you know, led me to actually not just look beyond myself or an individual client in terms of their pain and suffering, but society as a whole and our collective suffering,
Mm.
right? Because through the health coaching, I started realizing these common themes and that we're all the same, even though we're doing different jobs, we play different roles, we wear different masks, but underneath that all, we're all a human, right?
Yeah.
And the suffering came down to the same source, the same thing, and that is the thoughts that we pay attention to in our head,
Mm.
and how those thoughts lead to words or emotions, and how those things lead to deeds, and how we carry ourselves in our everyday life is that it's a it's a reflection of our inner world, right? Is the events and the things that happen to us. So I started looking around like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like there's something else. And that's really when I came across the Creative Society Project, which is an international public movement. It's 180 countries worldwide and millions of volunteers throughout the project. And essentially, we're trying to change the format of society, one that values human life, one that actually can put a human under circumstances that allows them to thrive, right? Because we're kind of adjusted to a sick world at the moment. And I think a lot of people are suffering because of their environment. You know, we tend to see usually people that grow up in abusive environments, right?
Mhm.
They tend to have an inclination for abuse, right? If you grow up with an alcoholic father, you either run the opposite direction, right? You never drink a day in your life, or you repeat the patterns through motor neurons, right? And you just repeat what you see. You adopt the coping mechanisms that you were taught, right? So that's what led me into the Creative Society Project, is just really working with an individual wasn't enough. Um, and seeing myself in everyone else and the potential that every one of us has, not only to live happily, but to flourish, right?
Mhm.
And the only way we can do that is if we come together as a united civilization and we start to understand certain things about ourselves, about humans in general, how we thrive, what circumstances are important for us. And that's really it. That's pretty much a summary of my entire my entire life right there.
Wow, you've been through a lot, and I see how your journey started first with kind of like coming to that realization that there is more to life than just what I'm experiencing right now. And at that point of your life, you felt in pain. You felt like you were suffering in one way or another, physically or mentally or emotionally. And a lot of times people come to the point where they know that it should be something better, that, I'm not here to suffer. It has to be more to life. So I have to kind of like focus on what is it that will bring me that joy and fulfillment, what can bring um, me the sense of aliveness, right? So, and that comes from within. And we usually turn inwards to understand who we are, what we can do, and what is our purpose here, right? And I believe each one of us has a unique purpose to serve in this world, and we're not just here for no reason. It has to be a reason for it, but a lot of times we just lost in the, everyday life, in automatic pilot, doing the same thing, or in that cycle, in a negative thinking pattern that really propels us to direction that really is not what we are or what creates the life that we want to live, right? In order for us to be authentic, we first have to realize, what is it that gives me that sense of fulfillment and joy? And how can I reconnect with that true self, the authentic nature of who I am? And I think we need to start from awareness, right? So that's like the first step. And for us to become aware, we have to just slow down and give ourselves this time, prioritize our mental and physical health enough to provide the resources and practices that could be integrated in our daily life in order to support our health. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I think the biggest thing that stops people from doing that is there's a lot of distractions, right? There's a lot of things where we can put our attention towards. And we're kind of fed this, for a lack of a better word, a lie about what it means to be successful as a human, about what it means, like what will make me happy, right? And the first thing we think about is some form, or when we think about success, it normally comes in the form of material things, right? A big house, a nice family, um, a good position at your job, right? Fame, some form of power over other people, right? So status. Um, and if we think about all those things, including family, these are all material things. These are things outside of yourself that you're looking for fulfillment in. So, there's plenty of people that have tons of money, 5 houses, and they're on vacation all the time. And then they go home and they beat their wife. So, what is it? If it's not all those things, then what is it? Right? If it can't be found on the outside, then what is it? And being that our culture is completely wrapped around these things, it's what we see in the movies, it's what we see, what we hear in the music, it's what we see in the news, right? It's what mainstream culture makes popular. So we grow up thinking that these are the things we need to pursue. And in fact, it's actually the exact opposite, right? It's not that there's anything wrong with having a nice car and a nice house and a family. Like, there's nothing wrong with those things, right? It's what's wrong is the pursuit of those things, thinking it will fulfill you, right? And not going deeper, right? If you want to have a nice car and a family, by all means, go and do it, right? If you want to make tons of money, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those things. But thinking your life will be complete once you do it, that's what's wrong. That's what causes suffering, right? So I think getting to know yourself a lot better, and stop distracting your attention to the outside world, like you were saying, right? And start bringing your attention inward. And it's when you do that, when you learn to shut out the noise of the external world, and whether it be, everyone has their own routes on how they do it. There's tons of techniques. There's tons of methods to tune the outside world out. But I think actually it gets really complicated for some people, right? Like they think that there needs to be a certain way of achieving these sorts of things, right? And we start to identify with, oh, I'm a yogi, or I'm a Christian, or you attach yourself to some label,
Yeah.
realizing it's actually the same thing. Well, if I have a nice car, that's a label that I can put on, that's something I could add to my box of identity, right? So when you feel unhappy, right, and you don't want to beat your wife anymore, and then you become a Muslim and you're like, okay, well, now I'm a Muslim, so things are much better, right? It's like, well, you know, is that really true? Do you need a religion? Do you need to be a yogi? Do you need to, practice a specific thing only, right? Um, because if we look at, regardless of what practice or regardless of what religion, right, there tends to be a few truths in all of these things. And I think what's important for people that are on the path to ask themselves is, where does this truth lead to ultimately? Right. And it's hard to put into words because it's actually an experience that is beyond our space and time.
Mm.
So to relay it with sound waves is a little difficult, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely how a lot of people operate nowadays. They've been distracted with social media, TV, news, you name it. So it's very easy to find yourself being caught up in those things. But really stop and ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And who am I? And really like dig deeper into understanding of oneself and seeing like you said, seeing yourself behind the mask, behind the role that you play, not identifying yourself with the persona, right? And it's hard to do because it's like you're looking at your life and you're thinking, this is who I am, and I don't know any better than this. And I didn't see myself, you know, out of these circumstances. So I think this is who I am. But again, it's one form of attachment that people tend to. And with you not being able to release that attachment, that's what's also causing suffering. That's part of it, right? And it's hard to do, I understand, but also like being able to become mindful and aware of what is it that you are thinking about, what is it that brings all those emotions up, and how do you process those emotions, because with you suppressing them and really like not giving yourself time to for self-care, to really release and let go, this is when you see yourself kind of like feeling not right, something is off, you can't name it, but you have to prioritize this mental health enough to give that time for yourself. It could be different practices, like you are doing martial arts, right? A lot of people find themselves like working out in the gym or doing yoga, anything that you love doing, or meditation. um, I think it really helps. Physical movement is part of the process that could initiate the mindfulness in daily life. I think there's a body-mind connection, and it helps to release those emotions. It helps to like uh, to let the flow coming and going, And it's just that what comes to mind. But a lot of times, like, we think, okay, so this is not something important. I have to go to work, do this, do that, and this is list of to do things, and that's what we're focusing on. Or then we're being distracted, we need to watch TV or whatever, and then we find ourselves being also in a place where we are not living our own life, and we're trying to please other people around us and trying to fit in into what society that we live in are telling us, to put ourselves in that box, right? No wonder we're not happy, not fulfilled. And I think with us really, like, giving ourselves time and also thinking about what is it that brings me joy. And it's not being selfish. I think it's essential. It's essential to really, like, look into your own heart and to understand what is it that I love doing? What is it that I'm here to share with others? What is my passion, my gift, right? To get it out of you, you have to reconnect with who you are and give yourself more over opportunity to practice that, or start doing something even like on the side as a hobby. You know, sometimes people in 9 to 5 jobs, they telling the story that, you know, I don't have time to do anything other than this, and then they hate their job. But it's not gonna stop until you create that time, and we are capable of doing that. Once you start taking responsibility of what you have so far in your life, you're the one created this right now for you, so you're the one who's gonna change it for you, right?
Right.
You
Right.
agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key word is responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, which is quite funny that you mentioned that, because on December 2nd, me and the volunteers of Creative Society are hosting a forum that's called The Responsibility.
All right.
Um, yeah, and it's exactly what it sounds like, is how do we take responsibility for our world, right? As a collective society, what can we do, right? Um, and you're right? Like, you applied for the job. You drive to work, right? You bought the car you can't afford, right? You wanted the vacation that put you in 3 years of debt, right? Like, you chose to party all night and now you feel like shit. That was your choice. These are all your choices. So why do we make these choices that we regret? You know, why do we go the wrong way? You know? Um I think in the beginning of what you were saying there, which I think is really important, is this, all of our, like, the body mind connection, right? Our physical pain, emotional pain, all of this pain, or traumas, or whatever they may be, it's all, this energy is just information, right? And energy never disappears, it just changes form,
Mm.
right? So we know, like, when, even though when this, flesh suit no longer functions, that energy just doesn't disappear. It changes its form, and it transforms into something else, whether my body becomes soil or flesh for, or food for animals or bugs. It just changed it. The energy doesn't disappear, right? So if I can't release this energy and turn it into something good, it's going to get stored in the body, right? And I found, through studying people's pain and my own pain, that there's actually common themes about where people store this pain, how they store this pain, right? Where it's actually almost becomes predictable about what someone's gone through when you observe their body, right? And it's quite amazing because we tend to compensate in similar patterns. Right? I'm not saying you can predict someone's life, but when you learn the compensatory mechanisms of the musculoskeletal system from an injury standpoint, from a trauma standpoint, you start to see these reoccurring patterns. That's actually quite interesting. And this is all of inside of us. And if we don't have an outlet to transform that energy into something new, into something good, right? It stays stuck inside of us, right? You could even maybe go into the metaphysical concepts of like chakras and how they're blocked and how you can see it in the electromagnetic field or right. And even go that route with it too. But if we want to think from a more practical standpoint, for most people at least, like you said, we don't have an outlet, right? And for me, one of my biggest successes, I think, is that I get to be that outlet for people with martial arts, right? Where normally, excuse me, I'm trying not to breathe into the microphone here, but um I find that the demographic for me are men between the ages of 20 and 45 is the biggest demographic. Okay. But that 30, 35 to 45 demographic are all people that are in that situation. Like you mentioned, they work a 9 to 5. They're stressed all the time. They spent the last 5 years thinking about doing jujitsu. They finally walk in the door and they're so proud of themselves just for getting in the door. And they're like, I'm out of shape. I haven't done anything for myself in a really long time. It feels good to be here. I'm really busy. I have a family at home that I take care of. And the first thing I say is like, I'm glad you decided to do something for yourself, because what happens is, and it's quite funny, is they either love it or they hate it, right? And they have an outlet where they can take all this negative energy that's stored in the body and they put it towards skill building, right? They put it towards joining a community and actually communicating with people. They put it towards a physical activity. It's also a mental activity because it's like a moving game of chess, right? So jujitsu winds up fueling multiple parts of a human, right? Because they can exercise, physical, they can communicate, that mental emotional aspect of it, right? And then that spiritual aspect of it, of knowing that your potential is greater than what you give yourself credit for. And if you take responsibility and you work hard, right, you can become something not on the outside, but you can become a better version of yourself, right? So you have all of these different aspects. And then back to what you were saying about wearing the masks, right? Or fitting this role, the ego does that. So now they see this transformation in themselves and they think it's jujitsu's fault, right? And they're like, I'm a jujitsu guy, and they run around and then all of a sudden, like their Instagram handles change to something jujitsu, or, they got jujitsu tattoos and their whole friends and family know that they do jujitsu and they think their transformation is because of jujitsu, but it actually has nothing to do with it. It just so happens you wound up at a jujitsu school, but you could have done all of these things in a different way, right? You could have transformed that energy into something good by being a painter, by walking with your dogs and your wife, like in the woods, like you could have taken multiple routes to expend this energy, right? But it's our natural way of feeding that ego in us. But we're always looking to try to play this role, right? So I think to finish that thought is, if you don't have that outlet
Mhm.
Where is your investment of attention? It's on, oh, I hate this traffic. I don't want to go to work, right? Before you go to bed, you think like I have to wake up in the morning and go to work, right? I'm too tired to handle chores. I'm too broke to, buy what I want, right? And it's the attention goes towards the system. It
Right.
goes towards the things you don't have. So
Mhm.
you get more of the things that you don't have, or you find more reasons about why you don't have those things. And then
Mhm.
you feel empty, right?
Mhm.
Meanwhile, we could take that attention, we can build that awareness of how these thoughts come in. We can organize them and realize those thoughts don't have to dictate our actions, right? We could almost view them as if they're not even our thoughts, right? It's just information from the system. And I choose where to invest my attention. And with that investment of attention comes energy into that thought. So if I think before I go to bed, oh, I really don't want to go to work, right? And I go to sleep thinking these negative thoughts, I put myself in this, sympathetic state of stress. Now I try and, I'm stressed about going to work. So let me like eat a snack so I feel better, right? And all of a sudden, now your digestive system starts going. Now you really can't sleep. And because you can't sleep, you say, oh, I'll just scroll through my phone anyway. And there you go with that whole chemical cocktail of keeping yourself up at night. And people aren't realizing all of those things, all of those behaviors came from the idea that you don't want to think about having to go to work tomorrow.
Right.
So what else do our thoughts make us do? You know? So if we invest the attention in those specific things, our behavior, our words, and our deeds will follow the investment of those thoughts. So I love how you have people talking about like practical applications to really get themselves through this because this is the human dilemma here. This is everyone's dilemma. And we all need our own strategies in order to make our way through this.
Definitely. And I know people struggle with where they're gonna focus the attention to because, like it becomes familiar, right? And what is familiar, it's easy to follow. And we again identify ourselves with that type of lifestyle that we live in, with this type of role that we're playing. And whatever is new or unknown is usually uncomfortable. It's usually, kind of like is not in our field of view, and we kind of reject it as it comes in. But we have to, in the beginning, know that maybe few times you're gonna go a new route, you're gonna try something new. Maybe in a way you could be uncomfortable, not because it's scary, but because it's new and unknown, right? And if we give ourselves that um kind of like explanation that it's just temporary. Any new habit requires at least like 30 days or so, right, to build. So eventually it will become familiar, it will become a second nature, but you have to start from scratch. When we were kids and we were trying to brush our teeth, we didn't know what to do, and eventually we got a handle of it. It's the same thing, just in different circumstances. But again, like every one of us can train ourselves to start doing things differently, to really change our focus, to take our focus from what we've been looking at to what really will be beneficial for us, and knowing that it will take some time, but in the long run, again, our choices will determine the outcomes, right? So we are the ones who is gonna build that foundation for the better life to come. And we will see ourselves maybe in a year from today being in a totally different place, feeling differently, and knowing that, we really created that for ourselves. And with that responsibility also comes the confidence too. Eventually you will build that confidence. And I like how you showed the example of the jiu-jitsu, how people come in without doing any type of martial art before, but now they showed themselves what they're capable of, right? So sometimes we need to see the evidence of what we can do in any type of endeavor, like whatever we choose to do, the activity. We want to see the result, the evidence that we show ourselves, because in the beginning, we usually say, oh, I never done this before. I'm not as good as him or her. We usually compare ourselves, but have you ever tried? Of course, if you never done it before, you never tried, how would you know? And it comes back to not really believing in our own abilities and what we can do, right? In our potential. How can we realize that potential if we don't know what it is? We don't know what we can be in this life. We should give ourselves that chance. And that really kind of like shows a proof, some kind of evidence that if I could accomplish this, what else can I do? Right?
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that comfort zone is a very dangerous place to be, right?
Mm.
Um, because if I had that guy that wanted to come to his first class, listen to his thought, like, you're out of shape, you're gonna get your ass kicked, you don't belong there, you can't do that, right? And then you have all the excuses that follow. Oh, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, like, oh, it's too far away, or like, I have to see what my wife says, like, and then you get those words that are then the result of putting the investment of it of attention on the thought that you can't do that, right? And then the doubt starts to come in. And all of that was a self-defense mechanism so you don't have to step outside of your comfort zone, right? You didn't give yourself that chance of that future potential because you didn't want to leave your comfort zone. But that's our responsibility, right? No one can force you to do that, right? So when I see it all the time, and it's funny because the higher self or personality or whatever you would like to call it has this ability to see these things. And as you're making the excuse, which I'm just recalling the habits that I see people upon deciding whether or not they want to start their jujitsu journey. And they'll tell me all their excuses. And they'll go into their personal life and why they can or that they shouldn't. Or I'm like, you're here, man. Like, you walked in the door and it's your choice. Like, I'm not going to convince you to do it. But you came in here for a reason. You knew it was good for you. So if you don't want to do it, I'm not going to try and sell you on it. Like, it's your choice. You have to want to be here, you know? And the crazy thing is that's not like, you're just talking about picking up a hobby, like, you're not getting married. You're not like moving your whole family across the country. Like, you're doing it or you're not. You could stop at any time. It's not that big of a commitment. Um, but the crazy thing is we'll choose. We'll choose a situation that makes us suffer because we're used to it, because we've listened to the thoughts that tell us we don't deserve more, right? Like, I don't know why I keep going back to the abusive relationship, but it fits here too, right? Where uh, a woman is physically or mentally abused by her husband. she starts thinking, well, I can't afford rent without him, right? Like, um, he does all the grocery shopping, or we've been together for 10 years and like he's really a good guy, and then you get all of these reasons about why you can't make the decision to find someone that actually cares because you're stuck in that comfort zone. Things have been always been this way. And I
Mhm.
think that's, as a creative society volunteer, this is one of the biggest things we come across is we, millions of people, are trying to change the format of society to one that values human life as the very first principle. Human life is the highest value,
Yeah.
and people can't wrap their head around it because they've been in the same system for so long, right? Like think about it, when you're young, you enter elementary school, you open the books and they start telling you about war. Like, what fourth grader needs to learn about war? Why do they need to know that people are killing each other at such a young age? And as a young one, you think, oh, this is what people do. This is what we do, right? And it's honorable, right? So now you grow up in a culture, right? You grow up in this scenario, whether it's your relationship, whether it's the fact that war is normal, and you're like, this is this is what we do. This is what we've always done. And someone comes along and says, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. And you're like, oh, what? But I can't imagine life being any other way, right? And we just stay where we're at, whether you stay with that relationship or your confidence as a united humanity, the potential for a united humanity, and how we can truly change things and make, with all 8 billion people on board, can change the format of the world, can provide advanced technology, can provide food and shelter for everyone, right? It's not like there isn't enough resources. We live in an abundant world. It's just the way that things are structured. It's to keep positions of power. It's to maintain this illusion that the hamster wheel is normal, so that people are tired, so that people are sick, so that people are struggling and in a state of fear. And you don't have the energy to invest it in change because you're just stuck in this constant motion where, like we mentioned earlier, right? It's like, how do I reinvest my energy or my attention somewhere when I'm just getting by? I don't have the extra energy to change the world, right? But excuse me, but it's slavery. That is how you control someone, by making them think they're not capable of doing more. And you stay where you're at, which is sad.
Yeah, with the thoughts and patterns that we acquired along the way, it's hard for us to change, but it doesn't mean it's not possible, right? Every one of us can find this internal compass of what they want and find that energy or desire for change if they want to. But it has to start with awareness. It has to start with our responsibility, with our really attention to what matters and how we can give ourselves the best chance in life. And nobody is gonna come and rescue unless we wake up. Every one of us has to wake up internally and realize that I can do something. And it's not just because I'm the only person that wants it. Maybe you're not the only one. Maybe there are other people who wants the same thing, right? It's just for you to to know what you want, to be courageous enough to speak up. It really requires you to put time and effort into building yourself first, to be strong enough to do something about it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It takes time, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And,
Certainly.
I'm glad that we had that conversation today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And for those who would like to find you online and find more about Creative Society and the forum that is happening, just tell us more about it and how we can look up online and where we should go.
Sure. My social media accounts for Instagram is Holistic Jiu-Jitsu. My TikTok, which is dedicated solely to the Creative Society, is 72 Truths. And I'll be a speaker at the upcoming forum, actually, that the Creative Society volunteers are hosting, which will be on December 2nd, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Which you guys, whether you're on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, or there is so much content out there created by the Creative Society volunteers. And we're talking people all across the world. It's such a powerful project because there is no finances involved. All of the forums, all of the videos is done by a volunteer basis only. And we're talking, some of the world's best scientists, all different fields, people coming together on these international teams to really bring a lot of truth to the world. And the next forum coming up is called The Responsibility, right? It encompasses our conversation today, right? Because if we want to create a better world for our kids, if we want to have a better life for ourselves, we have to have that courage, like you mentioned, to whether it's speaking up about the truth in your own head, right? About why you really can't go to sleep at night, right? Like you got to stop going to the fridge and scrolling on your phone. Small responsibility, but some of us need it, right? Or it's changing the world and saying that, oh, little old me, I can't do anything. My voice doesn't matter, right? Might seem like a bigger responsibility, but as you mentioned, it leads our actions. And I'm again really grateful for the opportunity to speak and for what you're doing and making people really look inward, right? Because as we mentioned in the beginning, that's where our true self is, and that's how we'll get fulfillment.
Yes, thank you. And I'm gonna add it in show notes as well so people know where to go. And as we close today, what would be the thought for our listeners?
Hmm. I think the thought would be, where do you put your investment of attention? So every thought, every word, and every action you take is a contribution to your life and everyone around you. And what constructs those things? And where do you fix the beautiful gift of attention that you've been given? And I think if people can do that, answer that question for themselves, they'll realize they are the architects of their life and of this world, really.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned!